Hi, there's loads of new settings that have been added to my audio app, so I'm sorry if I sound like shit. But I wanted to talk about Gypsy Rose quickly because I've seen, if anyone's been on the internet in the last month, maybe, you'll have seen the discourse surrounding her and I don't know, maybe big love. I don't know, I'm trying to word this in a way that makes sense because I feel like she is the new it girl, but obviously you have to kind of approach this in a bit of a different way to just Tube Girl or Alex Earl or something, because she's come from a very different background to just blowing up on TikTok for making makeup videos, do you know what I mean? And I kind of wanted to talk about the difference in perspectives that I've seen from people on her, case, and how her story has, I feel divided people in terms of judgment. I feel I know I've spoken about judgment before. I've literally got a whole podcast about judgment, but I feel a big thing that I've felt within this case, obviously I'm in no way involved or have any affiliation, but I do have an opinion. And my opinion is that she was, if you don't know about the case, I'm not going to go into it because I don't want to miss any details. So if you don't know, go and read an article, there'll be hundreds, and then come back, because I don't want to say something that's wrong or, misspeak on her case, because it's not really for me to speak about. I just want to give an opinion as to why I think this is such a big thing at the minute. And I think my opinion is very much good for her, and that she was put in a very, very unnatural sort of situation, but in a way that she would never have known how unnatural it was. And I think the fact that she managed to come to that realization of how unnatural her situation was all on her own and do something about it. Yes, obviously her methods were harsh, but also I think what happened to her, it's I'm very much of the belief that, this is kind of unrelated, but I will link it in, that the death penalty shouldn't exist, because I think it's an easy way out, and I think it's an easy way for prisoners to not suffer for what they've done. I think if you're just going to kill someone, that's, let them sit with it, let them sit with their guilt. And I think that you can sort of apply this to Gypsy Rose in the sense that she had to sit and know in herself that she was okay, and something was, not quite right, and she was being told all these things, but she felt competent, but, she was being manipulated and gaslit, and all this, all these lies about her age and her competence and her abilities. And, apparently a lot of her family, I know I said I wouldn't speak on her case, but I feel like this is an important thing to say, is apparently a lot of her family were really, really shocked when they saw her walk through the courtroom, because they just couldn't believe it. And I feel like this is a thing that I am really passionate about in myself, and it is obviously to no way of the same extreme, but I feel like we should be giving everyone a voice, regardless of what you think. And this is where the judgment thing sort of ties into it, is regardless of if you think or not that they deserve a voice, everyone deserves a voice and everyone deserves to have a say. And I feel like if she could speak, and I don't know, I haven't watched the act, I haven't watched anything, but I feel like, were doctors not concerned that she seemed competent? Or, I saw I've seen clips of the act, and I'm going to get around to watching it. And maybe I'm speaking on this a little prematurely, and I'm going to misspeak on some things because I haven't seen the documentary, but I saw one clip, and it was of a doctor being like, I don't think you're allergic to sugar, and try a Coke, and if you can drink it, you can drink it, and you're not going to die. If you have an allergic reaction, I can help you. And I feel like if that doctor, I don't know how real that was to the situation, because obviously it's a TV show and I know sometimes they pull things differently to make it more digestible for viewers, but I feel like how can you have that concern and not think, is there something else going on? And maybe there was, maybe she did, help her, and I don't know, but from what I can see, it seems like Gypsy Rose pulled herself out of that hole, and the only way she knew how was the most extreme way. And I'm not surprised, because all she's seen in her life is extreme methods. And I feel like this is the thing with when you're judging someone, especially someone that you don't know, and it's a spectacle, is that you judge someone based off of your own preconceptions, or, well, what I would have done is, or, whatever. And I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and we were saying about how, do you ever think, like, how someone reacted in a situation and you think, like, I would have never done that? Or if you really enjoy, if, like, you see someone behave, say, for example, someone's in the queue in front of you and they don't have the right thing for them. Like, I don't know, you're in an ice cream shop and they don't have the flavour that you want, and in you would get really upset, but they handle it really well, or, like, make light of it or whatever. And you see, have you ever just seen someone handle something really, really well and you think, wow, like, I'm going to take that on board, and next time that happens, I'm going to use that method? Because I do that all the time. Like, obviously, having ADHD comes with, just being neurodivergent in general comes with a real lack of ability to read social cues, or not maybe a lack of ability, but a difference in ability. And I've been explaining this to people for a while now. I sort of learn by copying, and if I see someone do something that I like, I'll pick it up and, like, incorporate it into my own brain. And that's how I get through life, is that if I see someone behave in a way that I think is courteous or kind, or if it's a difficult situation and I wouldn't exactly know how to navigate that situation, and they react in a way that I wouldn't have thought, I'm like, oh, that's so good. But this is the thing with Gypsy Rose. She doesn't have any frame of reference of how to act in a situation like that. And I'm not surprised that her, one of her first, because apparently it was like her second resort was like murder. Like, her first resort wasn't murder, but the first plan, like, didn't go ahead or something, or it's like the cinema or something. And I feel like if you don't have that understanding of social cues and, like, natural human progression, of course you're going to jump to the most extreme thing without maybe fully realising the consequence of your actions. And I think there's a real level of nuance to this situation, in which a lot of people are saying if she was competent enough to know that she wanted to get out of that situation, she was competent enough to deal with it in a different way. And while I do think that's true, I also think this is where the nuance comes into it, is that it's a very tentative line between, yes, she can think for herself, and yes, she can, get on the internet and she can do all these things secretly and, like, evade her mum in that way. But also, from what it seems, the first person that she came across on the internet was, I don't know if he was her husband or her boyfriend or whatever, the guy that killed her mum. He seemed like a little bit of a suspect character. I saw online that he apparently had previous convictions for, like, tossing himself off in a Mackey's for 9 hours straight, pretty much. And I feel like that in itself, from someone that has been socialised normally, to the best of my knowledge, he may not have been, I don't know. But that is not necessarily the best person for her maybe to have spoken to first. And I feel like this is the thing, is I'm trying to word this, like, as clearly as I can, but, like, the way it's in my head and, like, getting that out into words is kind of confusing. So just bear with me. But I feel like, if the first person you meet when you come out of a situation that is so, isolating, and where you're so trapped for literally your whole life, to the point where all you know is entrapment, and all you know is that one type of thing, anything to you is going to be better than what you've got. I just saw a video. It's what actually like made me start recording this podcast, is that, you know, apparently her happiest memory in her life was going to prison and going out into the picnic tables because she could make friends. And she was like, you know, I was still in a controlled environment, but it wasn't as controlled as I had been before. And I think this is the thing, is it's so relative. And, you know, obviously everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. But I think a lot of people that are demonising her and criticising her should understand the relativity of her situation, and that how, if prison felt like freedom to her, imagine what her life was like. Like, I think a lot of us can't even begin to fathom how that felt, and to have such, you know, a lack of autonomy over your own mind, brain, relationships, like everything internal and external. Maybe not internal so much, because she obviously had her own thoughts, but don't get me wrong, her thoughts would have 100% been swayed by her mum. And it's really, like, I think eye-opening to see how she's taking the digital route, obviously, like, you know, within social media, because I think she's really, really trying to engage. And she obviously knows, you know, that people are interested in her and people want to know about her and whatever. And I really appreciate how transparent she's being. She is showing her personality to the fullest, and she is showing who she is and where she's come from. And she's not trying to water herself down into the classic influencer mold that we're used to seeing. And I feel like this is where things may take a turn for her, because I've seen online a few girls talking about how, like, please don't let Gypsy Rose be the next influencer pipeline where everyone supports her and then she gets too famous, too successful, and everyone thinks, oh, let's bring her down a peg. Because, you know, I agree with that. I'm so fed up of someone becoming successful and someone doing well for themselves, and then all of a sudden people are like, actually, I think you're quite mid. Like, do you remember when Margot Robbie, like, obviously she's been famous for a really long time, but when she got Barbie, she sort of skyrocketed to, like, you know, top of the ranks. Like, she was the it girl for a while. I mean, she still is, but do you know what I mean? In that level of, like, pop media frenzy. And as soon as, you know, literally my whole life growing up, all the boys around me have been like, absolute 10, I love Margot Robbie, whatever. And then as soon as she got Barbie, quite a few of the boys around me were like, yeah, like, she is pretty, but, you know, like, that's it. And I don't know what it is about as soon as someone becomes desirable amongst a female audience, it's like this thing of, like, girliness. I don't know. It's like, it almost feels like anything that we love and we choose to love collectively inevitably gets torn down. You know, whether that be the bow trend, or whether that be Tube Girl, or whether it's Alex Earl's Get Ready With Me videos, or whether it's Gypsy Rose sharing her life out of prison, it's for the girlies. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's girl content. Like, this is what we enjoy, and we all enjoy it. We all love it. You know, we all love these things. And it's almost like as soon as they rise, they fall. And I feel like this is just judgment. And, like, sorry, I was about to get a bit passionate there, but I'm like pretty sick of it, because, you know, I understand that sometimes you can just think, what is actually so special about this? Or, like, you know, how did they reach this level of fame so quickly, or, you know, whatever. But it is such a trend that you love someone and then you love to hate them, and I really don't understand it. And I feel like with Gypsy Rose, her situation is so different from anyone else in the world that we've seen at the minute, you know. And I feel like it's very much, it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out. I don't know why I'm getting this thought, but I'm going to try and explain it. And please don't get mad at me if this upsets you, because this is just the way that my brain has comprehended it. So there's a really famous quote, and I don't know who it's by, but it's like, what is heaven for the spider is hell for the ant, or I don't know what spiders eat. I've definitely spoken about this before, but it's like, you know, one thing is good for one person, but it is inevitably bad for someone else. That doesn't make it inherently good or bad. It just depends what side of the coin you're viewing it from. And this is the thing with relativity and judgment, is when you judge something, you're viewing it from either side of the coin. And I think the thing to do, especially with a situation like this, is to step back and look at it from, you know, a broader perspective and view it objectively, because when you have a subjective view on something, you're not considering the whole picture. And obviously, you know, murder is bad. Obviously. Like, do you know, is so many people are like, yeah, well, she's still a murderer. And it's like, yes, valid. You have a great point there. However, you do need to consider all of the factors that went into, you know, that event taking place. And it's like, in war, for example, I think it's like, there's a song by like Jelani Blackman or something, and he talks about how we don't like violence unless it's funded by the government, and we will condemn violence in small scale, and we will condemn, you know, things that make us uncomfortable, but as soon as it's got the badge of war or for our safety, or, you know, there's a huge, you know, dollar sign on it and it's backed by the military, it's like, well, this is just not my problem anymore. I can take it off of my conscience. And it's this exact same thing. It's just on a much bigger scale, you know, like any war that has been fought ever. And I'm not about to, you know, talk about any current wars going on. I do not want my words to be misconstrued at all here. And I'm not going to make a podcast on it because I'm just not well educated enough to be speaking on Israel or Gaza or anything. But in terms of every war that has ever occurred in the history of the human race, there is no positive outcome either way. Like, success for one is the loss for another. And that is how it is, regardless of what the goal is, regardless of what you're trying to achieve, whether it's you want land, whether it's you want resources, whether you want fuel. It doesn't matter what it is. It's the same as the spider and the, I don't know, what did I say, ant, you know, it's that thing of someone has to gain, and it's the natural balance of life is that someone else has to lose. And it doesn't always have to be in the way that it goes. And this is, I think, what a lot of people are saying, is that, like, you know, war doesn't always have to be as extreme as it is. You know, have a talk about it, like try and come to like some civil agreement. Or with Gypsy Rose, she could have done something differently. She could have tried to escape. She could have whatever. But, you know, that's how it is. And there's no point in judging something that's already happened. You just have to navigate through that forward. And I hope that's making sense. And I don't mean to draw such a stark comparison, but I think it is, you know, on whatever scale it is, was the death of her mother justice for the, you know, years and years of pain that she was put through? Is that fair justice? Is that unfair justice? I can't talk, because the only person that, you know, will know that is Gypsy Rose herself. But it's that thing earlier of, you know, my views on the death penalty are that it's an easy way out. Other people may view that as the most extreme form of punishment, which is, you know, often why it's not allowed anymore. So it's all so subjective, person to person. And that's why I feel like having this open dialogue about getting this, you know, I don't know if holistic is the right word, but getting this like whole view of the story is important. And I know I probably sound like a hypocrite because I haven't watched the act and I don't know everything, and I'm just going off of the small bits of media that I've seen. But I think this is, again, you know, I take a topic and I discuss the wider theme of it. And I think the wider theme of this is that we look to praise and we look to punish, and we don't look to do much in between. We like to have things to cheer on, you know. I don't know why this is coming into my head, but, you know, I could talk about Amber Heard and Johnny Depp for a minute. And when that was all going on, we looked to praise Johnny Depp, we looked to punish Amber Heard. And now on TikTok, I don't know if it's just my corner of TikTok, but I've seen, and I also, quite frankly, I don't have an opinion. I have an opinion, but I'm not prepared to share it, especially because it's to do with, domestic violence, and it makes me uncomfortable. But I think, I see so much now about how justice for Amber, and it's like, just as quickly as you have one thought, another thought is the norm and the new narrative, and it's like, it makes it very, very hard to create a set of, ideals around something when, because, I was talking to my boyfriend last night or the night before, whenever it was, and he was saying, one thing that I really appreciate about you is if we are having a discussion or a disagreement, is that you are willing to take on new information, and you will change your perspective based on new information. And I think that's something that a lot of people really, really struggle with, is that, and don't get me wrong, I've worked really, really hard on this, because I used to be very, very when you get angry and you just kind of see red, and no matter what anyone says, even if it's a misunderstanding, you can't see past that. So I personally really wanted to work on that for myself. But it's, I think this is something that people tend to struggle with, is that we're constantly bombarded with information. We make an opinion. We carry that opinion. And then we hear something else and we think, oh. And I heard this quote once, and it was from Miley Cyrus. And I don't know if she invented the quote, but I heard it from her initially, so I'm going to give her the credit. But she said that two things can coexist and contradict each other at the same time. And that just really, really stuck with me, because I think it is really, really important to understand that while Gypsy Rose, for example, her intentions were good for herself but bad for someone else, that does not mean that, one is more worthy than the other. They're both equally as important, even though they contradict each other. What is good for her was bad for her mum. It was probably the best case scenario for her in that situation, but it was the worst case scenario for her mum. And it's balance. And I think this thing of things contradicting each other, it's I was just saying about when you come into new information, and obviously the internet does this on a mass scale. One time you're team Selena, then you're team Hailey, and it's just oh, who do I choose? And it's someone can have this set of values and they can have done these things, but that doesn't instantly make them completely at fault. And I think this is what we do. Our brains really, really like to categorize, and it's really, really hard for our brains to understand that things can exist in two boxes at the same time. So Gypsy Rose, for example, we can understand. I think it's easier to understand and comprehend in this situation. Maybe in situations that are less of a spectacle, maybe you could say, or maybe a bit more private. Again, the thing with judgment is you like to fill in the blanks, so you make assumptions. And when you don't have the information, you tend to not make things up, but you'll be well, I think she did this because of this. And then you'll run with it, even though that probably isn't the truth. And I think, with Gypsy Rose, we have a lot of the facts and we draw conclusions from those facts and call it definitive. And a lot of us have a very absolutist mindset, and that is our downfall, because it's so important to be able to say, although I have now come into this information that definitely changes, my perspective, it doesn't discredit the previous information I had. And that is really, really important. I think that's something that a lot of us forget when we begin to tear down specifically women, I will say. Can we stop doing that, please? But we will completely forget all of the good they did. And I'm sure all of you will have had this thing where you'll fall out with someone and you'll forget any good interaction that you've ever had with them. It happens to me all the time. If I have an argument with someone, it becomes really hard to see past that and remember that their positive traits. Because you're just you're in one side of your brain, and those, two parts of your brain, it's really hard for two parts of your brain to operate at the same time. Someone told me once that gratitude and pessimism cannot operate at the same time. So if you're angry at someone, you can't then think about all the good things that they've ever done for you. And that's why I think people get so angry, you know, in an argument when they're like, I've done like so much for you, like, where has this come from? And then they're like, you can't just use that, blah, 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 blah. Because, you know, people say that quite a lot, like, where has this come from? Like, think about all the, you know, good things that we've done together. And it's like, your brain literally cannot process that. And I think we collectively, as a collective, need to work on, like, again, stepping out. And I think this comes with, sorry to say it, but like this comes with meditation and this comes with mindfulness, is being able to, even in anger, step out of that anger and realize that you are not that anger, and to view things objectively. And I know I'm not, obviously this is sort of strewn away from the Gypsy situation, because I don't think people are necessarily angry at her, but I think people get heated about it because it's obviously to do with life and death. And I think people make such an opinion without understanding that, you know, she can have done this one thing, but they're also, you know, it seems we either love her or we hate her. And I definitely love her. I can't lie. I do. But I'm not forgetting that she also did kill someone. But I also understand the reasoning behind those things. And, you know, it's that thing you just have to have. You don't have to if you don't want to, you know, think whatever you want to think. But I think, personally, for my philosophy, it makes a lot of sense in not just this instance with Gypsy Rose, but to feed this into every relationship in your life, that someone can do something that you really, really disagree with, but it doesn't take away from the qualities that they already have. You know, a lot of people will say about all true colours, or their true colours came out. And I don't really agree with that, because I think that just because you see someone's shadow side or sides of them that aren't as desirable or are unkind, that doesn't mean that the nice sides you saw of them are any less valid. And, you know, true colours, I feel like leaves the impression that what they were showing you before was false. And while I do believe that some people really do pretend, and they give you, they make you see what they want you to see. But I do think that a lot of people, you know, they have a good side and they have a bad side. Or everyone has a good side and a bad side. And I feel like this thing of true colours is, again, a way to forget that anyone had any good side to begin with. You know, I think it's really, really important to understand that we all have demons in our closet, some of us more than others, i.e. Gypsy Rose. And the bigger the demons, usually the harsher the consequences. Like, it's one of those things. People that have been through more trauma tend to react more severely, and that is just how it is. I mean, any therapist will tell you that. Someone that has little to no trauma, or has, you know, secure attachment styles, or hasn't lived life constantly walking on eggshells, isn't probably going to be as volatile or as, you know, unstable as someone who has constantly lived a life basically in fear. And, you know, when you're fearful of something, why do all wars start? Like, if you look all the way back, sorry I keep bringing this back to wars, but it just is in my head. But, you know, you look back to, like, the olden days, really, really far back, a lot of the wars started because we were scared of other people, specifically, like, the racial side of things. Us as, like, white people were intimidated by different races, and we were scared. We didn't, instead of taking the time to get to know, you know, the benefits that could have come from these relationships, it was a threat. We posed it as a threat, and then it just led to bad things. And I'm not trying to draw comparisons between race wars and Gypsy Rose, because I understand that is completely different. But what I'm saying is that, sorry, I understand this is a really tentative subject, and by bringing race into it, it's made it, you know, really, really serious. I'm not trying to undermine that at all. But what I am trying to say is that we have fear for things that we don't understand. And quite often, instead of allowing ourselves to understand these things, we react because we think we're in danger. And, you know, in Gypsy Rose's case, she was in danger. she was in physical danger. She had been in physical danger. And I think that's the thing that is a real, point to note, is that if you were in such severe danger, if you'd been kidnapped and held hostage, would you kill someone to get out safe? I think I would. I genuinely think I would. And, cancel me for it if you want, but I've not been in that situation. I don't know. But I know that if I felt that threatened and that my life was that, in danger, I would almost do anything I could to get out of it. You see these experiments and these social experiments, and when people get put in an unnatural setting, that they'll do, the Hunger Games. I know it sounds stupid, but people will do anything they can if their survival is on the line. And that's, I think, why I keep bringing war into it, is because fundamentally that is what war is. Life is on the line and you want to survive. And I think it really does boil down to that. It's that primal instinct of protect yourself. And I think a lot of people are kind of forgetting that when they're harsh on her. And I'm not defending her, and I'm not trying to make all these excuses for her. But I'm saying, if you look at it, if you strip it right back, her life was in danger and she wanted to get out, and she didn't have, I don't know how, advanced she is now, but she didn't have at that time the social skills, nor the people around her that had, better skills to give her or to teach her. She did the best she could with what she knew. And I think, we honestly, just cut her some slack. She served her time. She's done her sentence. She was in there, she was in there for a long time. And I'm sure she's learned a lot while she's in there. And my brain is now switched off. So thank you guys for listening. I know this was quite deep, but I do feel like it's a deep topic to discuss. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I would quite like some feedback. So if you have any feedback, either positive or negative, I don't mind. You can type it in the bottom below. I would really appreciate that. Thank you guys. Love you.